The moment she walked into the CEO's office, everyone stopped and stared. A young woman, tall and confident, yet carrying a weight that seemed far heavier than her years, approached the desk with a single purpose: repaying her father's debt. Her heart pounded, and her hands trembled slightly as she placed the envelope filled with money in front of the powerful man. She had been taught all her life that honor and responsibility meant sacrifice, and today, she was ready to prove it. The CEO, a man known for his strict rules and sharp business mind, looked up from his papers and paused. He didn't flinch, didn't scold, and didn't ask for the money. Instead, a small, unexpected smile appeared on his face. "You owe me nothing," he said calmly, "but dinner together." His words hung in the air, confusing her, stirring both hope and unease. In that instant, a tension filled the room, a clash between duty and kindness, between fear and curiosity. She had come expecting a cold, transactional response, yet this man seemed to see something else entirely, something human, something worth more than money. As she hesitated, unsure what to say or do next, a subtle shift in the air hinted that this meeting would change more than just her father's debt. Would she walk away after fulfilling her duty, or would she discover something entirely unexpected about the man in front of her and, perhaps even herself? The answer wasn't clear, and the story was only just beginning. This was more than a debt, it was the start of a journey that neither of them would forget. She took a tentative step back, her mind racing. Dinner. That wasn't what she had expected. She had prepared herself for anger, for rejection, maybe even humiliation. But this was something entirely different. Her father had left behind more than just unpaid debts. He had left her with a reputation, with expectations. And now she faced a man who seemed to challenge everything she thought she knew about responsibility and honor. Her life hadn't been easy. Growing up, she had watched her father struggle, often taking risks that didn't always pay off. She had learned to be strong, independent, and determined to fix what others had broken. Every decision she made seemed to be weighed against a sense of duty she could never escape. And now, standing before this CEO, she felt that same weight pressing down on her again, but with a strange mixture of relief and confusion. The office around them felt impossibly quiet, almost like time itself had paused. She noticed the little details, the polished desk, the neat stacks of files, the way the CEO's eyes seemed to study her without judgment. It was intimidating, yes, but also human. She wanted answers. Who was this man really? Why had he dismissed her payment so easily? What did he mean by dinner together? Her curiosity battled with her caution. Part of her wanted to run, to walk away, and pretend she had never come. But another part, smaller, braver, more desperate, wanted to know what lay beneath that calm, commanding exterior. And as she stood there, uncertain, a sense of anticipation grew, hinting that the evening ahead would uncover secrets neither of them were ready to face. The first step toward change had been taken, but the real story was only just beginning. She finally nodded, her throat tight, and followed him out of the office. The elevator ride was silent, but every step echoed in her mind. Questions buzzed like insects she couldn't swat away. Why did he choose kindness over anger? Was it a test? Or did he simply see through the armor she had built around herself for so many years? As they walked toward the restaurant, her thoughts wandered to her father. He had always been reckless, making choices that landed them in trouble more than once. She had grown up carrying his mistakes like a heavy cloak, hiding her own dreams under the weight of responsibility. She had expected scolding or a lecture, not this strange, almost gentle challenge to her assumptions. Meanwhile, the CEO seemed calm, almost casual, but she sensed an underlying intensity. She noticed the way he observed the world around him, small gestures of attention to staff, to strangers, to details most people ignored. There was a story here too, she realized, a life carefully controlled, maybe even lonely, behind that confident exterior. She wondered what had shaped him into someone who could look at her with curiosity, instead of judgment. The tension between them grew as they sat at the table. Every glance, every pause in conversation, seemed to carry unspoken meaning. She wanted to understand him, to decode why he had dismissed her payment so easily, yet part of her feared uncovering truths that might complicate her mission even further. Outside, the city lights flickered, reflecting the uncertainty she felt inside. Dinner had begun, but the real conflict was just starting between duty and desire, past mistakes and new possibilities. Neither of them knew where this evening might lead, and the air between them crackled with the promise of secrets yet to be revealed. The conversation at the table grew heavier with each passing moment. Words were exchanged carefully, almost like each sentence was a step across a tightrope. She spoke of her father's struggles, of the sacrifices she had made, of the life she had built around responsibility and duty. He listened, nodding occasionally, but his eyes betrayed a depth she couldn't quite read. There was something unspoken in his gaze, something that pulled at her curiosity and at the walls she had so carefully constructed. As the evening progressed, she began to notice little contradictions, in him moments of sharp authority softened by fleeting gestures of warmth, quiet humor hidden behind a polished exterior. She realized she was trying to understand him, to predict his thoughts, but the more she tried, the less certain she became. And yet, despite the uncertainty, she felt a strange pull, a need to keep going, to see what lay beneath the surface of this man who had just dismissed her father's debt with a simple, almost casual invitation. Her mind flickered to the envelope she had brought, the symbol of obligation and guilt she had carried here. It sat untouched in her bag, irrelevant in the face of the tension building between them. The air felt electric, charged with anticipation, as if both of them were holding back something crucial, something neither dared to voice. Yet then, as he leaned forward slightly, lowering his voice, a shadow of a revelation flickered across his expression. For the first time, she sensed that this dinner was about far more than money or obligation. There was a truth waiting to surface, one that could change everything between them and, possibly, everything about the life she thought she understood. The night was thick with questions, and with every passing second, the moment of reckoning drew closer, leaving her heart pounding and her mind racing. Just as she began to feel a fragile sense of ease, the CEO's phone buzzed sharply on the table. He glanced at it, and for the first time, a shadow crossed his face, a flicker of tension that didn't match the calm, controlled man she had been studying all evening. She felt her pulse quicken. Something was about to shift, something beyond her understanding, something that could change everything, she thought. She knew about this encounter. He excused himself for a moment and stepped outside, leaving her alone with her swirling thoughts. Her mind raced. What if there was more to her father's debt than she realized? What if her arrival tonight had triggered consequences she hadn't even considered? She stared at the untouched envelope in her bag, wondering whether her sense of duty was about to collide with secrets far larger than she had imagined. When he returned, his demeanor had changed, subtly less formal, yet more intense. He leaned across the table, lowering his voice. "There's something you don't know," he said, his eyes locking with hers. "This isn't just about money, and it's not just about your father's debt. It's about choices, consequences, and someone who's been watching you for a long time." Her stomach dropped. Someone watching her. Every step she had taken tonight, every move she had made, suddenly felt exposed. The tension that had been simmering between them surged into a sharp, electrifying edge. She realized this dinner was no longer just about repayment or obligation. It was a test, a challenge, and a revelation all at once. The room seemed smaller, the night outside darker, as a storm of uncertainty and fear collided with curiosity and determination. Whatever was coming next would force her to confront truths she hadn't been ready for, and the moment of reckoning was closing in faster than she could imagine. The CEO leaned back, studying her closely, and for a moment, the world seemed to shrink to the space between them. Then he spoke, his voice steady but firm. "Your father's debt. It was never really about money. It was about trust, about responsibility, and about knowing who you can count on when the world turns against you." She swallowed hard, feeling a mix of relief and disbelief. All this time, she had carried guilt and fear, believing that her worth was measured by the money she could give, the sacrifices she could make. And now, sitting across from him, she realized the real test had been her courage, her integrity, and her willingness to face the unknown. He reached across the table, a gesture so unexpected it made her pause. "You've proven yourself," he said, "not by paying a debt, but by showing who you really are. You owe me nothing, except, perhaps, to keep living boldly, and maybe, to have dinner again sometime." Her chest tightened with emotion. The tension that had hung over the night finally lifted, replaced by a sense of connection she hadn't anticipated. But before she could respond, the CEO's assistant appeared at the door, holding a small envelope and a phone. He handed it to him, whispering something urgent. He glanced at the note, then back at her, a flicker of shock crossing his face. "It seems," he said slowly, "that your father left one more secret behind. One that I didn't expect to surface tonight." Her heart skipped a beat. Just when she thought the night had resolved, a new mystery emerged, hinting that the journey was far from over. And as the lights of the restaurant flickered softly around them, she realized that this was only the beginning of a story far bigger than either of them had imagined. She stared at the envelope in his hands, her fingers trembling slightly, but the fear that had gripped her earlier was replaced by a quiet determination. Whatever secret her father had left behind, she was ready to face it not out of obligation, but because she finally understood what it meant to take responsibility on her own terms. The CEO smiled, a genuine warmth in his eyes that made her heart lift. "Your father, he trusted you more than he ever trusted anyone else. This," he said, handing her the envelope, "it is proof that even when we think the past defines us, the choices we make today can change everything." Opening the envelope, she found documents, letters, and a small key, a key to a storage locker that her father had kept hidden for years. Inside, she would discover not only evidence that cleared his debts completely, but also memories, keepsakes, and lessons that reminded her of who she was and where she came from. It was as if her father had left a final gift, a bridge between the mistakes of the past and the opportunities of the future.